Fourth reading I would like you to read the book of Job is because I found after some time that I almost was thinking that I was reading the book of Psalms with the way, the vivid expressions that, Job and his friends painted, very poetic, and it went on and on and on. But at one point, I realized that the difference between what I'm reading and the cases that we'll find or verses that are poetic like that you find in the book of Psalm is that in the case of Job, we were living the context. We understood why he was in that state and saying things like that, or in cases where it was his friends that were talking. Unlike when you're reading the book of Psalm. For instance, I remember, I think it's Psalm 51 or 53, I can't really remember now, where David said, "Create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from thy presence, O Lord, and take not your Holy Spirit from me." Now, that psalm is stood alone in the book of Psalms, whereas in the case of Job, when you have poetic verses like that, you can see that Job was reacting to a situation or his friends otherwise doing the same thing. Compared to the cases where you have in the book of Psalms, was much, much later when I, studied and realized that the psalm that I said earlier, where David was praying for God's forgiveness, he wrote that when he committed the sin of adultery and was waiting, waiting on the Lord for forgiveness. It would probably have been most ideal if that was in the book of Kings or Chronicles where that incident was recorded. So it would have flown together and give you the context of the situation of how the psalm came about. And you don't find things like that in Job because you're living the experience. And because of that, it makes it more relatable and more, I don't know the right word to say now, maybe you just you can understand it better. I have written two sentences saying, unlike Psalms, we get to see why Job says the things he said. And for example, in Job 13, verse 15, he said, "Though he slay me, yet I will trust in him." We can see that he made that statement in a situation where he was high and then low and then high. So he was discouraged, but then later he realized that, well, I still trust in God. I'm not going to curse God. And that's why he made that kind of utterance. So I've got two questions for you. The first is, have you ever read a verse from Job or thought it sounded like Psalm if you have read the book of Job? So put an answer to that for me in the comments. And do you think understanding the context of a verse makes it more powerful? So this would be for people that would have read some verses in Psalms and they would be wishing that I wish I had understanding of this, which would have come more easily if you have it in context.